Hello, and welcome to the first episode ever of For the Penguins. My name is Mika Milikota, and I'm going to be your host. Thank you so much for listening in. This podcast is going to be about sustainable jobs and how to get them. It mostly started because I myself had a really hard time getting into the sustainable industry, even though I had a huge passion for it. So, what we're going to be doing here is interviewing different people with different backgrounds, different skill sets, but one common passion sustainability. Starting today, we're going to be interviewing Cailin Ellis. She's a sustainable interior designer, and she's going to be telling us how she got her job, what her background is, and any tips and tricks in case you're interested in doing the same. So, without further ado, let's get to it. Welcome, Cailin Ellis, to this podcast, my little passion project. How you doing?
Good, thanks.
Very happy to have you here. So today we're going to be talking about the sustainable interior design industry. Do you want to give a little introduction of what do you do? Why are you here today?
Ooh, yeah. So I'm Cailin. Basically, I am a sustainable design lead and focused in the interior design realm at a local interior design firm in Indianapolis, Indiana. And basically, I just focus on our team's internal practices and then try to advocate at our local level and just work with lots of people in the Indianapolis community to try to make things better. So, yeah.
Nice. It's funny because you're the first person that I met like out in public that does sustainable, like any that is in the sustainable industry, and we met at something not sustainable at all. Like it had nothing to do with our industries
Yeah.
at all. Okay, so tell me, how did you get how did you find this job? How did you get into this? And what does sustainable interior design mean?
Yeah. So I think I kind of got into this position specifically. I knew Pamela Francis, she's our VP, and she focuses on sustainability at SHOT as well. Basically, she just took it as a passion project during COVID and ran with it, and then brought me on to help execute some of the items that she wanted us to focus on.
So it's a
Um,
new company.
so they've been around for 25 years,
Oh
but
wow.
just like design in general and focused in like the commercial realm, office space typically, but they didn't really start focusing on sustainability right away. When it was created 25 years ago, it wasn't necessarily like the main focus in the industry. So we've been able to kind of capture a lot of information pretty quickly, I guess. But yeah, so basically, I met Pam at a networking event, the U.S. Green Building Council. I was on the board as the VP and the local chapter in Indianapolis, and she got on one of our like chapter calls and came in kind of hot and heavy and was like talking about sustainability at the city of Indianapolis when I was working there. And she has a lot of really good questions. So over the last 3 years, we've stayed connected. We'd grab coffee, we'd catch up, and so then finally I was like ready to leave the city and move on, and she was like, come work for me.
That's
So
awesome. So wait, so
yeah.
how did you join that council? Can you repeat the name?
Yeah, so the US Green Building Council, basically they chair up the LEED program, which is a certification body for buildings and interiors.
Mhm.
And I got involved in that with my first job out of college. I had just gotten out of school. I got an interior design job. I was so excited. And one of my fellow colleagues at the time, Yasha Og, who is one of the people that I know that is also focused on sustainability and interior design, he was like, you need to get more involved. You're young and fun. Like, come to this meeting with me. Like, no big deal. We're just gonna have some beer. They'll have some snacks. And I'm like, like out of college,
Young
like
and
beer.
fun is the best
Yeah.
thing to be.
So I go and it's the first meeting in there. We're like, does anybody want to volunteer to be a part of like the local chapter? And I was like, sure, why not? Um, and so I just kept showing up to meetings and going to events and helping plan Earth Day activities with children and our team. And then
Oh,
eventually took on a larger role with them. So
that is
yeah,
awesome. Wait, so what did you study? Because the person that got you into this council, you studied with them?
I didn't even study with them. I just met them at work. So
Oh,
I went to
nice.
school. Yeah, I went to school for interior design, and a lot of people ask like, "How did you know you wanted to go to school for interior design?" And to be
Mhm.
honest, I don't think I knew. um, I wanted to go to art school. I was a little unsure. I grew up painting my room different colors. I think every couple months. my dad worked in the construction field, and paint was the cheapest and easiest thing that you could redo.
Hmm.
And so he'd be like, let's do this instead of her trying to like redo everything.
Yep.
um, so we would do that. And yeah, so I went to the Art Institute of Indianapolis for interior design. And I think during college, I worked at West Elm and Restoration Hardware to kind of feel out like residential. What is it like to specify like sofas and furniture for like homeowners versus then some of my internships later on at Office Works and relocation strategies were focused on commercial interior design and
Uh-huh.
experiencing just like what is it like then working with like a tenant or a landlord, somebody who they own a lot more. It's not as personal.
Hmm.
Um,
And you do commercial now, correct?
yeah, so yeah, they kind of I don't know. It's bigger scale. There's like larger. I don't know. It's very different. Yeah.
So are you a designer or do you work on more the technical or more the admin side? Like what is your
Yeah.
job in the company?
Yeah. So I focus on, I guess, a little bit of both. I am practicing interior design and working with teams to help space plan and work on construction documents and make sure that it's buildable and scalable. A lot of companies are scaling down office space right now. So, how do we rethink how to fit 100 employees in a smaller space or something? But then during that process of when you're building out a new space or demolishing existing, we started changing the verbiage from like demolition to deconstruction.
Okay.
And so I sort of work hand in hand along that process of when we're building out a new space, if there are existing walls, how to reuse them. Because drywall is like a very large construction material that does not have a repurposed, like you can't really use it for much. Like sometimes they've mixed it in with like soil, like farmers will use it, but there is so much drywall that we cannot do that. So we landfill it. Um,
So
so
what do you think that switch happened? Because you mentioned that the company that you're in, they've
mhm,
been around for 25 years, but only recently they started having that sustainability goal in mind.
yeah.
What was that switch?
I think honestly, I mean, I think a general shift in society too, right? Like people got really scared of global warming and then we're
Hmm.
like, what do we do? And then you hear a couple things that like the built environment is a huge contributor. And then I think most recently I feel the last couple years there's a magazine Metropolis that released kind of this, I don't know, packet of information, if you will, that like you could read through and watch videos that was kind of explaining that architects and engineers help build the structure, the building. And then they kind of let the interior designers on the inside redo things. And then every 7 to 10 years in an office building, leases are up. And so we specify new material. And basically, over the life cycle of a building, interior designers are specifying like 15 to 20 different outfits of a space
Uh-huh.
versus like the architects and engineers do it like once or twice in the building's lifetime. And so I think that really hit home for our owner, Jenny, and Pam, the vice president, their sisters. And Pam really, she has a finance background and was just like, we should do better.
Yeah.
And her and Jenny were kind of figuring out how to work on that. And then just because I think Pam doesn't have an interior design degree or background, she just I think needs more help realizing like how to actually do that in practice. So that's kind of why I work on the individual team so that like when we're going through the process, we can make better decisions because it's, the walls, but it's also like the new paint. We need to make sure that we're choosing like a low VOC or flooring that could be recycled back into itself versus vinyl that you just throw in the landfill.
So I don't know anything about this. What is VOC?
Yeah, it's like volatile organic compound, and
Okay.
so a
So the type
lot
of
of
paint?
it's the VOCs can be in basically anything. They off gas basically when something off gases, it releases the volatile organic compounds. So when you open like a new package and you like smell that new smell,
Uh-huh.
it's like it could be a VOC. So it could be harmful, it might not be, but a lot of like paint or vinyl flooring or adhesives that are used to like mount things, um, they emit VOCs. And some are low, some say zero, some are like inevitable. Plastic
Huh.
emits things too. So like PVC, if you burn it, releases VOCs into the air.
Okay, gotcha.
So
So we're trying to avoid the VOCs.
yeah, we don't like them. We say no.
No
What?
VOCs,
Yeah.
none for you.
So when you walk into a new building and you're like, oh, what's that? Oh, it's the new building smell. It's like, well, like maybe be worried, but maybe not. I don't know.
Like this is not sustainable interior design. I know what that smells like now.
Exactly.
Like that's awesome. So it's crazy because I feel like one of the myths of sustainable interior design or sustainable anything is that it would be more expensive than the common
Mhm.
option. But it looks like what led the decision of your company to get more to sustainable was a financial decision.
Yeah. And part of that is due to we work with a lot of property managers and their tenants and property management. You want to save as much money as possible.
Yeah.
So we knew creating programs that our user base would like quote buy into needed to be basically like either free or like not additional cost or something that their tenant would see value in and like want to purchase space in their building. So we basically figured out that if you recycle the metal studs that are inside of a wall, it pays for the labor
Huh.
that it
Wow.
took to like pull it apart. Like there's lots of calculations and it's really boring, but it's kind of fun and like nerdy because you're like calculating the weight of like whatever went to the landfill and then like the square footage. And then there's also we've worked with carpet manufacturers because carpet is a very large I don't know, we all put it in buildings because it helps with the noise absorption, but for a very long time it was not recyclable because of the adhesives that you use to put it down, the backing that makes it squishy, and then the threads itself are made out of plastic usually. But we worked with carpet manufacturers like Milliken and Shaw and Interface, and basically for everything that we specify, they put in a pot of money to have it recycled through a local recycling company called Cruise Carpet, and they help us process that. So the manufacturers and the reps are actually paying for that program since they don't have an end of life plan.
Uh-huh.
And so they did that for our firm because of the relationships that we have. So it's like another no cost ad program. Um, but
So
yeah.
if I want, let's say in the situation,
Mhm.
which is not true at all, I have a very old carpet that I just have kept with me for many, many years. This is not a real situation, of course.
Mhm.
And I don't have a use for it anymore, but I don't really know where to throw it out. How can I recycle that carpet?
Yeah, so like what I would do is I would call Cruise Carpet Recycling because they'll take any kind of carpet.
No matter where you
Um,
are in the state? So is it for like
yeah.
the United States?
In Indianapolis, so there's like three carpet recyclers in like the country, and we are lucky to have one here.
Wow, okay.
It's really cool, and it also would help with like any kind of like LEED certification because you don't have to drive the material as far. But they've figured out a couple different ways. Sometimes it goes back to the carpet manufacturer and they recycle it back into itself. Sometimes it gets burned at Covanta, which is basically they burn to create energy for the city of Indianapolis.
Ooh, okay.
It's an interesting way to sort of like get around like the we're recycling, we're because it's like
You're still burning stuff, but there's
yeah,
a
so
greater good involved. Yeah.
yeah, it's not going in the landfill. And then so I guess that's another question of like how do you view sustainability? Is it just nothing going in the landfill or what? But then also they figured out I got to go to their site a couple weeks ago and certain
Ooh,
broadloom carpets that like most residential project homes have are like broadloom and
okay.
they can like grind it up and put it in horse arenas. So they mix it with the sand so it's like softer on the hooves. So
Oh,
the guy who owns Carpet Recycling used to be a farmer, and so he's found a lot of like very interesting ways to like use this stuff.
that is
Um,
insane. How you can just like reuse that things for anything for things that you wouldn't
yeah,
even imagine. Like I would not have thought like, oh, a carpet, let's make it for horses and in a horse
yeah.
arena. Like that
Well,
is insane.
he told me that, and I was like, "What? Why? Are you serious? Like, how?" And like, I'm like, "My aunt rides horses." I'm like texting her, and I'm like, "You will never guess!" Like,
I
um,
got your next Christmas present. Here you
I
go.
know that would be funny.
That'd be
Yeah.
so funny. That is
So
awesome. So basically, it sounds like you can have any type of background to get into the sustainable interior design field. So,
yeah, I think so because I think it's really just about being like kind of like in a more eloquent way, like scrappy, like because you have to figure out where to put the trash, basically. Like it's the stuff nobody wants anymore. Or at least that's kind of what we focus on because it's like we can specify new products, like let's say like a new bamboo something, right? Because it's more like renewable,
Mhm.
um, but we're not necessarily doing much like on a larger scale. Not very many people are doing much on like what we're removing and putting in the trash. Um, like Shaw Carpets, who they own like a couple different like carpet manufacturers like Packraft and I think Johnson something. They told us that we were one of the largest carpet recyclers in the country just from what we
Wow.
do. And I think working in a small women-owned firm, right? Like I'm one person, right? And like they tell you that and you're like, what?
There's a
Like,
lot of room to grow, it sounds like.
yeah, which is exciting. I mean,
Mhm.
like sad, but exciting.
So, is it a recent thing that you can recycle carpets, or like why is it such a new idea?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, and speaking in terms of like Indiana alone, we're not like the California where we're like, don't put it in the landfill. And our
Mhm,
landfill costs haven't gone up in like the last 30 years.
mhm.
So it's cheaper to landfill it than to recycle it in most cases. So, being in, I feel like the typical like statement of like, we're in the Midwest, it's like more, I don't know, conservative. We're not as forward in thinking about like green and sustainability. We also don't have like local code that pushes it, but they are rethinking like regional center approval for like downtown Indianapolis, and that's going to have a sustainability component, which is kind of exciting. I've like sort of inserted myself in that conversation
I
because
mean,
when
I
I
feel like there aren't a lot of people that would know what they're talking about when it comes to these types of legislation that needs to be passed, especially in a red state like Indiana.
yeah, and that's it. It's interesting because so I worked previously at the city of Indianapolis, which I guess is like a very going to school for interior design and then working for a governmental agency is not ever anything I thought that would happen to me. But while being there, like I worked in the Department of Metropolitan Development, and so you see a lot of building shift change, right? The city is funding new development, but at the same time, we're working with the Office of Sustainability and asking developers like, how do we make this better?
Mhm.
Um, but when there's nothing there that pushes that for any reason other than like you just want it, people don't necessarily gravitate towards it. So
I
yeah.
understand the struggle for sure. Okay, so another thing that I want to do with people that I talk to is kind of have some salary transparency, know where we're at. And then also to, prove that careers in sustainability can be profitable. And then you don't,
Mhm.
it's not the typical like, I'm a hippie and I don't care about anything else. Like, no, we want to advance in our degrees and, kill it in
Yeah.
the world, but also, with a nice mission statement in mind.
Yeah.
So, based on who I'm talking to, I'm gonna make the ranges something relatable. So, if your salary is 40K a year or below, we'll call that the recycled metal lamp. We have from 40 to 60K the bamboo rug. Then from 60 to 90K, we have reclaimed wood dining table, and then recycled fiber couch. So, where would you say your salary falls?
I'm in the rustic table realm.
There you go. That is awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say so if I'm someone that wants to get into more sustainable interior design in my own home, do you have any tips? I mean, the recycled rug was an awesome tip. I had no idea that was that was doable until I saw your story on Instagram. So, is there anything else that you would recommend doing if you want to kind of take a step in that direction?
Yeah, I mean, right off the bat is like buying used furniture, and I know a lot of it's sometimes like you're like, oh, I want a new couch. I don't know who sat on it. But buying something that already exists is already better because you're not pulling new materials out of the earth. But also choosing a sofa that does have either like the stuffing's made out of like recycled water bottles or like I don't know, something reused. And there's a lot of like fabrics now that are made out of recycled content. But I think looking at companies that have better packaging too,
Okay.
less plastic, or it's shipped more compact and you have to build it yourself. It's not necessarily amazing, but it takes up less space shipping wise. Um, I think those are some big hitters of just like bigger pieces.
I think it's really easy to focus on I guess, the material in what something
Mhm.
is made, but I get the packaging, the production, the shipping. It's a huge point in having something be sustainable, right?
Yeah, yeah. How it gets to you really matters. And something to think about, that's like part of the greenwashing is companies will say cradle to gate. So they have sustainable practice from when they make it until they give it to you. But
Mm-hmm.
something to pay attention to is cradle to cradle. And that means the company is thinking about it after they give it to you, if you can send it back or if you can recycle it yourself. So that's also another big, just like some like local jargon of,
Yeah, no, I would have never thought of that. Okay.
yeah, it's like cradle to gate, like we're doing so good. We've thought about all these things, and it's like I'm really excited for that, and I'm glad companies are on board with that. But I think the next step is we realize we can recycle things, and that will come, and that will be refined and get better. But more thinking about what happens when we're done with it, is just a really huge thing because then you have to ship it again, or like pull it
Mm.
apart, or burn it, or I don't know. So
That's a great point because that's where we are a lot in the sustainability industry in general, where we're trying to make these advancements to make things more sustainable, but then we don't have a 20-year outlook. We don't know what's going to
mhm,
happen in 10, 20 years when, all right, the thing that we bought that was made sustainably, now what? What do we do with it?
yeah.
That's a really good point to bring up. Thank you. And then, so lastly, I want to know, so if someone wants to follow your path or wants to get into the sustainable interior design as a designer, as a finance person, as the project manager, you can tell I don't work in finance. What advice would you have for them?
Yeah, I feel like my advice is like ask someone to coffee, who's maybe in the realm. Maybe it's not exactly like the right fit or something. Because it took me a long time in talking with a lot of people to figure out that like that's what it was called. Um, just saying like I want to help the earth and like I want to do this, like you turn into that crunchy hippie, and like that's not necessarily what I am. But also I think there's a lot of like local organizations that need more help, getting like the word out there, and so like going to the meeting or joining the group, and like not like be aggressive about it, but like just insert yourself, because more times than not, like they want you there and they need the help, but they also don't want to put too much pressure on like the new person who just showed up,
Hmm.
who wants to help.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, or if you're confused, like sit in on a call with someone. But I also a group I follow is Mindful Materials, and they do a lot of webinars. And so if you're like curious, but you don't want to like meet anyone in person to talk about it yet,
Hmm.
um, they just talk about a lot of materials in our environment and like just some different things going on. And that's a little bit maybe like less confrontational if people want to learn about it a little bit like softer.
Hmm. A little bit more passive. I get it.
Yeah, yeah,
That is awesome. Okay, well, thank you. That was great advice, great resources, great
yeah.
story. 10 out of 10 all around.
Thanks.